All right, so buckle up because today we're going to try to wrap our heads around the work of Sunny Jetsun.
Oh, yeah.
This guy, he's like, I don't even know how to describe him, like a poet, philosopher, activist, all rolled into one.
Definitely a free spirit.
Total free spirit, and today we're diving into excerpts from his ebook, Surfing or Suffering.
Which, by the way, is an amazing title.
Isn't it? Right from the start, he's got you thinking, surfing or suffering, what's that all about?
Like, are you riding the waves of life or are you getting crushed by them?
Exactly. And the way he blends like really personal stories with these big philosophical ideas, it's wild.
It's really unique. You don't see that every day.
Okay, so where do we even start with this guy? One thing that jumps out is this idea of, like, we're all connected. He keeps using this phrase, fields of sense consciousness, with streams and stars of hearts.
All right, it's super poetic, but it speaks to this concept you find in a lot of spiritual traditions, a shared consciousness, this web of being that links us all together.
Okay, I've heard of that. Like, we're all connected. But he actually says how. What does he say connects us?
Well, he even talks about the Mayan concept of enlightenment, which essentially means, I am another yourself.
Whoa, that's deep. I am another yourself. So it's like we're all part of one big
cosmic soup.
Yeah, exactly. And if we could really wrap our heads around that, really feel it, imagine how differently we'd treat each other.
And the planet.
Yeah, everything. But Jetsun, he doesn't just talk about like peace and love and interconnectedness. He also gets pretty, I don't know, intense.
Well, for sure. He's not afraid to call it like he sees it.
Yeah, like when he talks about war, corporate greed, all that stuff. He's not holding back.
No, he's not. It's like he's saying, hey, this is messed up. We got to wake up.
Yeah, and he names names. Like, he specifically mentions the Iraq War, corporate globalization, even the Patriot Act.
And you have to remember the context. He was writing this in the early 2000s, a really turbulent time. The war on terror, the financial crisis, it was a lot. And you could feel that urgency, that intensity in his writing.
This one line that really got to me was, red-hot children with chrysolite in a crimson death valley.
Whoa. Yeah.
He's like, what does that even mean? But it paints such a powerful picture, you know? It makes you think about the real cost of all this stuff we're talking about. Environmental destruction, corporate greed, our obsession with more, more, more.
It's like he's saying, look at what we're doing. Look at the consequences.
Right. And who are these consequences falling on? It's often the most vulnerable among us.
Exactly. And then there's that other question he keeps asking. Is the idea then to be left with nothing?
Oh, what's that about?
Well, it seems like he's challenging this whole idea that happiness comes from material possessions.
Yeah, like the more stuff you have, the happier you'll be.
Which is a message we're bombarded with constantly, right? But Jetsun's saying, hold on a minute. Is that really true?
He's making us question everything.
Exactly.
So how do we even begin to break free from all this? From the stuff that's got us so messed up?
Well, that's where things get really interesting.
Okay, me.
Jetsun, he talked a lot about like confronting our fears, challenging the way we've been conditioned, breaking free from what he calls like the ego's grip.
The ego's grip. Okay, what's that mean?
So the ego, in a lot of spiritual traditions, it's that sense of a separate self.
Right, like me, myself, and I.
Exactly. And that I that defines itself against everything else. It's constantly judging, comparing, wanting what it doesn't have, you know, the drill.
Oh, yeah, I know that voice all too well.
Right. And Jetsun seems to be saying that voice, that ego, that's what keeps us trapped.
In the suffering.
Exactly.
Yes.
Trapped in those cycles of suffering he's always talking about. And to break free, he talks a lot about meditation.
Meditation, okay. That makes sense.
He's a huge advocate for it. But, like, he doesn't just throw it out there as this, like, you know, cure-all.
Yeah, he seems to go deeper than that.
He does. He talks about these really intense experiences he's had through meditation, like traveling in your mind's eye, expand the mind, setting the mind free, infinite consciousness of eternal space.
Wow, okay. That sounds intense.
Yeah, he doesn't mess around.
But also kind of, like, how do you even do that? Expand the mind, infinite consciousness. That's a lot.
Right. It's like, where do you even start? But for Jetsun, it seems to be about, like, quieting the mind, getting out of his own head. He talks about experiencing what's called anatta, which is a Buddhist term.
Oh, interesting. I was going to ask about that. He doesn't explicitly say he's Buddhist or anything, but I'm definitely picking up on some of those themes.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Buddhist, Hindu, Mayan. He draws from all over.
Okay, back to anatta. What is that, like no self or something?
Yeah, exactly. It's this idea that our sense of self, that solid me we cling to, it's actually an illusion.
An illusion. Okay, now my mind is officially blown.
I know, right? It's a trip. But basically, the idea is when we can let go of that illusion, even just for a little bit, like in meditation, we experience this like profound sense of freedom
Freedom from what?
from the limitations of our own egos. We merge with something much, much bigger than ourselves, something interconnected. And when that happens, he seems to be saying that's when we can find release from suffering. He even uses the Buddhist term dukkha, which basically means suffering.
So it's like by letting go of the I, we let go of the suffering.
Exactly. Because so much of our suffering comes from that I, that ego, clinging to things, pushing things away, always wanting things to be different than they are.
Yeah, I can see that. But he also seems to suggest that this path to liberation, it's not always easy.
Oh, absolutely not. He's honest about the challenges. He talks about like confronting your shadows, facing your fears, dealing with painful memories, limiting beliefs, all that messy stuff.
Yeah, he doesn't shy away from the messy stuff.
Not at all. He says, the pain teaches no stepping out. Be in it. In the middle of the pain, there is no pain beyond the senses.
That's powerful, but intense.
It is intense. But he's not saying we should like seek out suffering or anything.
No, I got that.
He's saying it's part of life, it's inevitable, and that by like leaning into it instead of running away from it,
We can actually learn from it.
exactly, we can grow from it. He even says suffering brings a spiritual maturity if you want to accept it, not suppress, repress, oppress, obsess, deny, reject it. Facing it, the preoccupation with the self, the prison of our own ego.
So facing our pain, our shadows, that's the key to breaking free from that ego's grip we were talking about.
That's what he seems to be saying.
Yeah.
And by doing that, we connect with a deeper part of ourselves.
A part that's not afraid of the pain.
Yeah, a part that can hold it all. The joy and the sorrow, the light and the dark. A part that recognizes that, even in the midst of all the messiness, there's still beauty, there's still growth, there's still a reason to hope.
It takes real strength to face those shadows, to look
Yeah.
at the stuff we'd rather avoid.
Yeah, it's not easy.
But one thing I really appreciate about Jetsun is he doesn't just, preach this stuff from some high horse.
Right, he's not claiming to have all the answers.
He's right there in the trenches with us, Like when he says, is the idea then to be left with nothing? Just witness your mind in action, how to take out your wanting, your personality completely. Whoa, that's a lot to process.
It really is. It gets to the heart of what he's trying to say, I think.
Which is what, give me the Cliff's Notes version.
Okay, so to be truly free, we have to let go of everything.
Everything.
Yeah, like all the stuff we think we want, all the stuff we think we need, even the I who's doing the wanting and needing in the first place.
Okay, there's that no self idea again. But how do we actually do that? Let go of everything.
Well, that's the million-dollar question, right? He talks about like needing to break our own mind's ego, our sense of self, our entire identity, just to become something more cosmic.
It's like he's saying the way we usually experience the world through that lens of me and mine, that's actually the problem.
Totally. It's that constant craving and grasping that keeps us stuck.
Stuck in suffering.
Exactly. But he also suggests that even our thinking, like our usual logical way of thinking, that could be part of the problem too.
Really? Our own thinking can be dangerous.
He asks, every little last bit, and then there's unknown karma from eons before. The designer of your every thought and action which is rational and not accustomed to quantum physics views from outer inner space, it's psychological, mental, physical, and emotional extraterrestrial entities not knowing much intuition. It's very dangerous.
Okay, whoa. Quantum physics, extraterrestrial entities. This guy's mind is a trip and a half.
I know, right? He's not afraid to go there.
But I think what he's saying is logic can only take us so far.
Exactly. Sometimes we need to trust our gut, our intuition, even if it doesn't make logical sense.
He even compares our minds to, being hunted by a tiger. He says we're being stalked by an extinctive tiger in a panic room, a virtual jungle playing inside your mad head in a cloud, questioning every move, observing every choice, reacting to every sense.
Yikes. That's an intense image.
It is. So how do we tame that tiger? That crazy mind of ours.
That's where mindfulness comes in.
Mindfulness, okay. Being more present, more aware of our thoughts.
Exactly. Because those thoughts, those patterns of thinking, they can really drag us down.
He actually lists out a whole bunch of ways our minds can mess us up.
Right. Like he's saying, pay attention. This is serious stuff.
He says, can make you suspicious, superstitious, give you an introduction to fearful paranoia and take you to the front line of schizophrenia, lead you down the path to suffering and intense pain, despairing, worry, stress, negative depression, denial.
That's a scary list.
It is. But I think the point is, if our minds can create all that suffering...
Then they can also create something different.
Exactly. But then he throws this other curveball. He says, can be very dangerous for the dreamer in your cells, Cupid. Looking for your God in a wilderness can even lead to acts of violence, to aggressive demagoguery, this mind construct, a selfish, greedy, ignorant, cruel personality called humanity.
It's almost like he's saying, don't get too attached to any one idea, even the idea of enlightenment.
Yeah, like don't just blindly follow someone else's path.
Right. Find your own. He even says, inside your heart, to be destroyed by you can be perilous. He compares this whole journey to like being a crack addict, a junkie, where you can be broken down.
So it's not all sunshine and roses.
Definitely not. There's a real danger in clinging too tightly to any one belief system, any one path, even if it seems spiritual or enlightened, and that includes like even his own teachings.
He's constantly telling us to question everything, even him.
Absolutely. He's like, don't just take my word for it. Think for yourselves. He's a guide, not a guru, you know? He's pointing to something, but he's not going to force feed you the answers.
Because ultimately it's up to each of us to find our own way.
That's the journey, right? And he's honest about the fact that it's not always easy. There are going to be challenges. You might stumble, you might fall.
But it's worth it.
That's what he seems to believe, that the rewards of waking up, of seeing the world through the lens of love and interconnectedness, that's what makes all the struggle worth it.
And he actually gives us a glimpse of what that might look like. He talks about being humble and content and overjoyed not separatedly, a part of the living tree in tune with earth, sky, and sea, in touch with all the birds and bees, flowers, and harmony.
It's a beautiful vision. A world where we're not separate, where we finally remember that we're all connected.
All part of this big, beautiful mess.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he's inviting us to create that world. One thought, one word, one action at a time.
So as Jetsun would ask, what story are you choosing to tell with your life? That's something for all of us to think about. Thanks for joining us on this wild ride of a deep dive. It's been a trip.